Ravens fan, you won't believe what just happened. Lamar Jackson was voted the best quarterback of the season by the same voters, but when it was time to hand out the MVP award, they gave it to Josh Allen. How does that make sense? Jackson had better numbers, led the best team in the regular season, and still walked away empty-handed. Did they give Allen the award for another reason? Was it unfair, political, or just a strange voting process? When you hear the details of this decision, you'll be just as outraged as I am. Go Ravens! Josh Allen won the NFL MVP award in 2025, but it wasn't an easy victory. The voting was one of the closest in recent years, with Allen receiving 27 first-place votes, while Lamar Jackson got 23. They were the only two players to get votes in this category, which shows just how dominant they were all season. This tight race proves how essential both were to their teams, and how difficult the decision was for the voters. In the end, Allen came out on top, becoming the first quarterback in Bills history to win the award, a huge achievement for the franchise. Even with Allen's win, it's impossible to ignore that Jackson had an outstanding season as well. He led the Ravens to the best record in the AFC, put up incredible stats, and for many, was the clear MVP favorite. The fact that he finished just 4 votes behind Allen shows that this race was decided by the smallest detail. Allen's recognition came after a season where he refined his game, cut down on turnovers, and led the Bills deep into the playoff. For Jackson, the outcome was likely frustrating, especially since he dominated both through the air and on the ground, carrying Baltimore in key moments. What makes this race even stranger is that the same voters who gave Allen the MVP were the ones who selected Jackson as the league's best quarterback, by naming him first-team All-Pro. And this is where things start to get weird. Normally, the player who wins MVP is also recognized as the best at their position in the All-Pro voting, but this time, the votes were split. This contradiction raised a lot of questions about the selection process, because if Jackson was voted the best QB of the season, how did Allen end up being named the most valuable player? This detail makes the decision even more confusing and raises an important question. Why did the voters believe Jackson was the best quarterback, but still give the MVP award to Allen? If the voters themselves decided that Lamar Jackson was the best quarterback of the season by selecting him for first-team All-Pro, how did they turn around and give the MVP to Josh Allen? That's the biggest mystery of this vote. Historically, the player chosen as the best at their position in the All-Pro selections almost always wins MVP, because it makes sense. The best quarterback should also be the most valuable player. But this time, that didn't happen. The voters named Jackson the best QB, yet when it came time to pick an MVP, they chose Allen. This almost never happens, making the result difficult to explain. The confusion only grows when looking at the numbers. Jackson had better stats both passing and rushing, was more efficient, and led the Ravens' offense with dominant performances. Allen also had a great season, but the numbers clearly pointed to Jackson as a superior quarterback. If the awards are based on on-field performance, why was there a difference? This inconsistency in the voting left many fans and analysts scratching their heads, wondering what criteria were actually used in the selection process. One possible explanation is that voters considered subjective factors when choosing the MVP, something that doesn't play as big a role in All-Pro voting. In other words, they may have viewed Allen's impact on the Bills differently than Jackson's impact on the Ravens. But this raises another question. If the MVP is awarded to the most valuable player of the season, and Jackson was recognized as the best quarterback, does that mean a QB can be the best in the league but not the most valuable? This separation between the awards doesn't make much sense and casts doubt on how the decision was made. If the voters were focusing on each player's importance to their team, they may have felt that Allen was more crucial to the Bills than Jackson was to the Ravens. But was that really the reason behind this decision? The MVP award takes into account how important a player is to their team's success, and that may have been what worked in Josh Allen's favor. Unlike the All-Pro selection, which is purely based on technical performance, the MVP award involves a degree of subjectivity. Many voters may have looked at the Bills' season and thought that without Allen, they wouldn't have gone as far. He not only threw for 28 touchdowns, but also ran for 12 and even caught a TD, totaling 41 in all. On top of that, he drastically reduced his turnovers, something that had always been a criticism of his game. On the other hand, the same logic could have been applied to Jackson. He is the heart of the Ravens' offense, and without him, the team has struggled to be competitive. Over the years, whenever Jackson has missed games, Baltimore's offensive performance has dropped significantly. His impact on the team is massive, and that was evident once again this season. If the voters decided Allen was more valuable to Buffalo than Jackson was to Baltimore, that's a matter of interpretation. But even so, it feels like the criteria used weren't entirely clear. Additionally, the value argument can be highly subjective. If Jackson had better stats and was voted the best quarterback, how can one argue that Allen had a bigger impact? The Ravens also had a great season, finished with the AFC's best record, and made it to the conference championship, just like the Bills. So, the idea that Allen carried his team more than Jackson doesn't seem very convincing. The problem is that without a well-defined objective standard, decisions like this end up feeling more like a matter of perception rather than actual performance. But this perception might have been influenced by something even more concerning: voter fatigue, where voters avoid giving the award to a player who has already won before. Could that have played a role in Jackson's case? Well, we're already past the halfway point of the video, but I just realized you haven't left a like yet. That's super important because it helps YouTube keep showing you my content, and it allows me to keep bringing you the latest Ravens news. So go ahead and hit that like button. It's free. All right, let's continue. There's a phenomenon in individual award voting called voter fatigue, the weariness of voters who are tired of awarding the same player every time. This has happened several times in the history of the NFL and other sports leagues. When a player has won an award multiple times, voters may, even unconsciously, look for a new name to award, making the contest less about who is truly the best and more about varying the winners. In this case, it makes sense to think that this might have worked against Lamar Jackson. Jackson has already won the MVP twice, and if he were to win a third trophy now, he would join a very select group in NFL history. Perhaps some voters felt it would be boring to award Jackson again, and decided to pick a different name. But this shouldn't be a factor. The MVP is an award for the best player of the season, not a career recognition or a way to distribute awards evenly among candidates. If Jackson deserved to win again, that should not have been an issue if the voting was influenced by this kind of thinking. It raises a serious problem regarding the credibility of the award. An MVP should reflect a player's performance in a specific season without considering what they've already won. If Allen was chosen because he was a new name and not because he truly outperformed Jackson, then the award loses some of its significance. The fact that the voters themselves gave Jackson the All-Pro title shows that many knew he was the best quarterback, yet the MVP went to Allen. Regardless of the reasons behind the choice, what no one can deny is that this achievement places Allen in a historic position. He might have been a controversial choice, but this title completely changes his career and legacy in the NFL. Despite all the controversy surrounding the voting, the MVP award changes Josh Allen's status in the NFL. He was already considered one of the league's top quarterbacks, but now he has a trophy that few players managed to win. More than that, he became the first quarterback in Bills history to win an MVP, something even Jim Kelly, one of the franchise's greatest names, never achieved. For a Buffalo fan, this is an accomplishment that further reinforces Allen's significance within the team. His season was undeniably spectacular. He led the Bills to a 13-4 record, played more efficiently than ever, and carried the offense on his shoulders. In the playoffs, Buffalo once again reached the AFC Championship, but fell short against Patrick Mahomes' Chiefs. This has been Allen's biggest obstacle, as despite playing at a high level, he has yet to overcome Mahomes in the most crucial moment. Still, winning the MVP shows that Allen is firmly established among the league's elite. Looking to the future, this achievement could serve as a huge boost for both him and the Bills. But at the same time, it adds even more pressure. Now that he has an MVP under his belt, expectations will rise, and the only remaining goal is to take Buffalo to the Super Bowl. There's no point in being named the league's most valuable player if, in the end, you can't lead the team to a title. If Allen truly wants to cement his legacy, he knows he needs to turn this award into something even bigger. And for the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, this voting might serve as extra motivation. If he was already determined to win the Super Bowl, now he has one more reason to prove that he was wronged in this choice. This voting leaves many questions unanswered. If Lamar Jackson was chosen as the best quarterback of the season by the voters, how could Allen have been selected as MVP? Despite having inferior numbers in some areas, the decision seems to have been based on a subjective value criterion. But was this really fair? After all, both had a huge impact on their teams, and the discrepancy in the voting raises doubts about the process. Do you think Allen's choice was deserved, or should Jackson have taken the MVP award? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up with all the news about the Ravens and everything happening in the NFL.